Meteorologist Cheryl Nelson. And Cheryl, throughout the morning hours, it has gotten worse and worse and worse. I'm afraid. Make sure you're anchored down, right, with that wind out of the northeast coming right at you.
I'm trying to, Bernie. Yeah, so I am in Isle of Wight County on the James River right now in the Hampton Roads, Virginia area. I'm going to step out of the way here because I want you guys to take a look at the James River. And this looks like an ocean. And we're getting so many whitecaps right now. Across the way is actually Newport News, but you cannot see it because it's so obstructed now by the rain. We are getting pelted. Almost 2 inches of rain has fallen so far here. And we are on the very back edge of that rain. There's a very sharp cutoff as you go back to the west, back towards the Richmond area. There's not much at all going on there. But here, I mean, the wave action is going, and this is not even high tide, guys. We had our low tide this morning. The tide is starting to come back up. High tide will be occurring between 2:30 and 5:30 this afternoon, depending on your exact location in Hampton Roads. We are expecting major tidal flooding. So even as that storm starts to pull away, with the wind still coming right at us, we're going to get actually worsening conditions with all that flooding coming up on the roadways. It's not going to be good. I was out and about earlier in Smithfield, walking around Smithfield Station. Didn't find a whole lot of people out there, but I did come across one couple who was actually in town, staying at a hotel here because their grandson is getting married tomorrow. Take a listen.
Our oldest grandson is getting married tomorrow, and rehearsal dinner's tonight, so we're down for the weekend to see them.
So, were you concerned about the storm? Were they concerned about the wedding and the rehearsal dinner?
Oh, yes. But it's going to go on anyway, yeah. We were concerned about the rain. Some people aren't going to make it because of the weather tonight, but I think everybody will be here tomorrow. I think tomorrow's supposed to be sunny, I hope.
Yeah, tomorrow's going to be really nice.
And they had a really good attitude about this, I have to say. They didn't seem too concerned. They had their coffee. That's why they were out and about kind of walking around. And they said things will go on as planned. But I cannot imagine being the bride and the groom with this hurricane going on. Bernie, how would you feel about that? What do you think?
Well, as meteorologists, I think you and I would be blamed by our significant others, don't you think, Cheryl?
Yeah, I think we would totally be taking the blame for that. But tomorrow, thankfully, is going to be so much better. But before we get to tomorrow, obviously, we got to get through that high tide cycle this afternoon. And we have minor tidal flooding here in Norfolk starting at about 4.5 feet. We are expecting close to 7 feet at Sewell's Point in Norfolk along the James River. That's coming up again between about 2:30 and 5:30 this afternoon.
All right, Cheryl, no doubt about it. The worst of the storm right now from about Cape Hatteras on the backside right in toward the Hampton Roads area. All right, thanks, Cheryl. We'll be checking back with you.
To Cheryl Nelson this morning. Cheryl, you've been with us all morning long, and one of the key things that you've been talking about is that tide cycle and how this morning at low tide, it was actually functioning more as a high tide, and conditions are only getting worse.
Mm-hmm. Laura, that's so true. I mean, the winds are whipping behind me right now. We still have some light rain as well, but we are starting to see that water rise starting. In fact, we have some video that we shot just a few minutes ago in Isle of Wight County, Virginia here. That's in the western part of Hampton Roads, so we're a little bit more inland, but people might not understand the tidal system here. This area floods so easily when the water levels are high. So we're showing you Jones Creek, and what's happening here is the water is coming in from the Atlantic into the bay, into the James River, and then into Jones Creek, and that is starting to come over the road and cover it. Now, that's only the beginning, okay? So what we're going to see as we push toward high tide here in Isle of Wight is around 5 o'clock this afternoon. That whole road will be covered in that spot. It will become impassable because we are seeing storm surge of 2 to 4 feet of water. There's going to be a lot of water there, and people are not going to be able to get around very easily at all this afternoon or this evening. They should be staying home. In fact, the winds are so bad here with the tropical storm force winds that we have here, that was a pretty big gust. We're gusting 40, 50 miles an hour here right now. We have a lot of bridges and tunnels in this area, and the tunnel right now connecting Norfolk and Portsmouth, called the Midtown Tunnel, that has been shut down. So when you start to see these things happening, you know it's a big deal. Also, level 4 wind restriction on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, which connects the south side to the eastern shore. That is open, but only for smaller vehicles. No tractor trailers, no motorcycles, and honestly, I wouldn't want to drive anything over that right now because we have hurricane warnings just as you go out into the Atlantic Ocean. It's not pretty here. Speaking of ocean, I want to pan over to what you can see. Guys, this is the James River, okay? We normally don't have white caps. It is not supposed to look like this. The river is angry right now, and I want you to focus on that second pier. If you can see the water, the waves, it is almost, the water's almost hitting that pier right there where their boat would normally be. And again, high tide is not occurring for another several hours. So we're seeing lots of waves, lots of wind. Rain is starting to back off here a little bit on the western part of Hampton Roads. But things are only going to get worse as we go throughout the afternoon, Laura.
Now, Cheryl, given that you have so much knowledge about this particular area, how much higher can that water go? And do you expect that second dock could potentially just go underwater here before we make it to high tide in a few hours?
That's a great question. So normally this area, when we get to about 4.5 feet at Sewell's Point on the James River, same river as this, but that's in Norfolk, that's when we start to see minor tidal flooding. Right now we're expecting it to get very close to 7 feet at high tide. So we're talking a few more feet. And if you add a few more feet to that dock, it's going to be pretty close there. So it's something that's going to be a major concern. And our friends down in the Outer Banks, I mean, God bless them. Their lives may be forever changed in Cape Hatteras.
Right, because they've had an extreme water level rise there as well. Cheryl, thank you so much.
I want to bring in meteorologist Cheryl Nelson in the Hampton Roads area. And Cheryl, as a resident of that area, you know what happens when there's a northeasterly wind. It funnels right down the bay. And we had nearly hurricane force wind gusts right along the coast just a few hours ago.
Yeah, Bernie, we did, and it's actually still pretty gusty here, and I am on the James River right now in Isle of Wight County, but I gotta show you, it's a glimmer of hope. Look at that. The skies behind me are brightening just a smidge. Okay, so that's good news. The rain bands are actually moving out of here. We're on the western side of Hampton Roads. We're inland a little bit, but doesn't mean everything's done, okay? Because our next high tide, that's going to be the worst one. We are expecting major tidal flooding. If you're not familiar with tidal flooding, you basically get the wind from the Atlantic, and it's pushing all of that water in up the Chesapeake Bay, and then it goes into the rivers, and then here it is into some of the streams as well. And that was a pretty strong gust there. But I want to show you what's going on the James River. Look at this wave action, guys, okay? We were talking about that dock over there. We've actually moved down to one of the residents' dock. They were nice enough to let us stand here and borrow it, just so we could get a little closer to the water. But the waves are now starting to just crest, to go over part of that dock over there. Look at how big those waves are. And we're not even at high tide yet. High tide here is around 5:30, okay? And then Hampton Roads altogether, it's between 2:30 and 5:30, depending on your location. You can see that resident over there, he has a seawall, and the waves are crashing up against that seawall there. And look at this sea grass. Typically, this is not underwater, but the waves are pushing a lot farther inland than they typically do in this part of the world. Now, luckily, all the homes here, they're about 20-25 feet up in elevation, so that's some good news. We were up higher earlier, but now you can see all of the waves moving in there and crashing up against the shoreline. And as we go toward high tide, again between 2:30 and 5:30 this afternoon, we're going to see these water levels at Sewell's Point, that's in Norfolk on the James River, approach 6.5, possibly close to 7 feet. That's major tidal flooding. We still have a few more hours of this before things start to get better. And in this area, we can flood, Bernie, even on sunny days when you have a strong northeast wind.
And have you heard any problems with power outages? And I did see some reports earlier because of the rain and the wind that we did have some tree limbs down and some minor flooding in the area as well.
Yeah, the minor flooding has now turned into major in a lot of these areas here. I mean, some of them, the roads are becoming impassable. So it is getting worse. Power outages now around 40,000, give or take, here in Hampton Roads. Trees are down, power lines are down. And then get this. I heard reports down in Virginia Beach on the boardwalk that vehicles are driving on the boardwalk, which is illegal. I don't know how they're doing this or why they're doing this. And there are a lot of surfers out there in the Atlantic Ocean. And I'm sorry, but that is the last thing from a safety perspective that you want to be doing.
Yeah. In fact, let me show you the winds here coming around Dorian out of the north-northeast. Cheryl, hunker down.
Cheryl Nelson. Cheryl, you've been out there all morning today. I can see conditions have gotten a lot worse. Tell us about where you are and how things have been for you.
Hey there, we've been talking about this all morning today, that the tidal flooding was going to get even worse. And right now I am in Smithfield, Virginia at Smithfield Station. This area is notorious for flooding. And take a look at what's happening right now. I am standing in probably almost a foot of water. And as you go back that way, so this is a road. And then on the other side of that is a parking lot. So that's going to be 1.5 feet. It's going to be pushing 2 feet. High tide, though, here in Smithfield is not until 5:30 this evening. Okay, so the water is going to continue to rise. Smithfield police just came by. I was just chatting with them, and they said they'll give it about 20 more minutes, and then they're going to barricade either side of this so people cannot drive through it. We've actually seen numerous cars driving through over the last 30 minutes or so, but this water is rising. And I want to come out this way a little bit. Oh, look, there's the police officer right now. So actually, he just now got out here. And he's basically saying, okay, that's it, enough. We're not going to have any more cars driving through this water, because it takes 6 inches to reach the bottom of most passenger vehicles. Once you get up to a foot of water, at that point, that can float some vehicles. Once you get up to 2 feet, that can start to sweep vehicles away, and we don't want that to happen. And I want to point over there, too. We can see some cars coming, and I bet you if the cop wasn't here, they'd actually drive through it, because that's what they've been doing. But now that the cop is there, they're going, okay, we can't go this way anymore. And that's what you're supposed to do, guys. The National Weather Service, they say turn around, don't drown, for a reason. It's a safety issue. And this water is likely going to come up another 1.5 feet or so. And it's going to peak at Sewell's Point in Norfolk at around 7 feet, a little bit lower than that here. But that's major tidal flooding, guys. And in this water, I want to show you too. It's not just water. We've got, what is this? Some trash over here. Over here, I don't even know if I want to touch this, but it looks like a beer can. That's nice. I'm sure a lot of people are doing that today. But there's sticks, there's debris. Hopefully there's not sewage in here. I've got some really tall, high rubber boots on, so I'm not seeing any of this stuff. I mean, you've got all kinds of just random things floating in this water. And once we get to 5:30 tonight, this is going to be even worse. But the folks here at Smithfield Station, I chatted with them earlier, they said this is what happens. They know they're in a low spot here in Smithfield. They're used to it. They've got a couple big events, though, coming up tonight. A rehearsal dinner for a wedding tomorrow. A lot of people coming into town. The restaurant is open. But right now, things are kind of at a low because people really can't come or go.
All right, Cheryl, you've given us a good view of what's going on there. We appreciate it. And stay safe there, as you never know what's lurking in that water.
I'd say there's a lot lurking in that water today.
Yeah, you never know.